last year, I was only in my second week with you here when Lee and I worked with the children to create a 7-pointed star for Chalica, like this one, representing our 7 principles. And afterward, a few of you came up to me and said, well, we don't have 7 principles, we have 8. Well, yes, I said, but not exactly. You see, a few years ago, our Unitarian Universalist Association charged a commission on appraisal, a group that was specifically UUs of color, to come up with an 8th principle that would make explicit in our covenant our shared commitment to dismantling racism and other oppressions on our journey toward wholeness. When they finished their task with the draft, a number of congregations, like this one, immediately adopted it. Now, what was encouraging to see that happen, to see that kind of enthusiasm and commitment, it did jump the gun a little. The process for adopting a new principle, which is part of Article 2 of the bylaws of our Unitarian Universalist Association, is for a supermajority of delegates from congregations to approve it at an annual General Assembly in June. A lot of people thought that was going to happen, but something unexpected happened in our association, or maybe not so unexpected. There was resistance. See, some individuals thought that the wording was awkward and too dissimilar in tone and cadence from the existing 7 principles. And some thought that the 8th principle was redundant, that everything contained in it already existed in the 7 other principles. Some thought the process was undemocratic. And some, including people of all skin tones, thought that the process was racist. I knew last year that there wasn't much chance that the 8th principle would be adopted. And so I explained the 7-pointed star this way. Right now, we have 7 official principles. We may soon have 8, maybe in the future 10 or 20 or 5. Our principles are not a creed, but a covenant made between congregations. And like all covenants, it's a living document meant to be revisited and maybe even revised occasionally, so that it can be relevant in a constantly changing world. The 7 points on the star are meant to be a reminder that there were 7 principles when Chalica came into being. It's an opportunity each year to retell the story, the history of our principles and how they evolve. The 7-pointed star is a kind of snapshot in time meant to be a symbol of embracing positive change. Now, the 8th principle is stalled, and the Commission on Appraisal came up with something a little different from what we're accustomed to. Based on study and research and conversation with UUs in leadership all over the country, the proposal is something more simplified than what we currently have. Instead of a long, wordy principles that really nobody, I don't know a single person who has memorized them. They came up with something that's kind of a cross between a word cloud and a Venn diagram. And there are 7 words. They're arranged in a circle, and there's justice, justice, evolution, pluralism, interdependence. I'm really losing my space here today. Oh, equity, generosity, and love is in the center. And of course, we couldn't just leave it at those 7 words. So below is a deep explanation of each of those words and how they relate to our faith. But the point is, when they drafted this, ideally, they envisioned that we would all remember those 7 words in a way that we can never remember our principles. Now, I get it that some people really resonate with our 7 principles just as they are, and with our eighth principle too. And these are folks who don't want to see those principles relegated to the history books. And if you're one of those people, I really want to encourage you to go to the UUA website and look at the very long narrative, the history of how Article 2 has evolved and where it stands right now in that process. And I even want to encourage you to consider being a delegate representing this congregation at General Assembly in June so that you can vote your conscience. But the thing about all of this is that some people are angry. In fact, a lot of people are very, very angry. And a few of my ministerial colleagues are so upset by all of this, both by proposed changes in the principles and by the anger of some of the people in our congregations, that they're talking about leaving ministry. That's how great the vitriol is. And this all happens during the season when we are supposed to be celebrating our principles. The discussion is so full of disappointment and rage that I posted something the other day to the closed Facebook group for Unitarian Universalist ministers. Here's what I wrote. I'll admit it. I love Chalica. It feels like most UUs call it pointless, fake, shallow, derivative, even disrespectful. But this is the second congregation I'm serving in which we've created our own traditions and rituals that are joyful, celebratory, and honoring of our own stories and our own unique culture and values. We don't have to dance around the edges of the holidays of other religions, avoiding that line crossing into appropriation. We can have our own holiday. And in the process, give our children and youth practices and grounding they can hold on to and hopefully pass on to their children. My fabulous colleague, our director of whole life learning, and I have worked hard to make something real and to get parents and elders excited about this. I can't get over how grateful the parents are. Many have told us that finally there's something that they can bring home and do with their children, something the kiddos are actually interested in and excited about. And it's not a curriculum. At a time when infighting and resistance seem to be everywhere in our faith, Chalica, for me, is a time to joyfully celebrate our interdependence. And maybe, just maybe, Chalica could be one reason our kids grow up and want to stay with us. Now, I don't want to make it sound like Chalica is going to cause millions of people who've never heard of us to suddenly flock to our doors and want to join us. And I don't pretend that it is going to be the thing that keeps 100% of our kids with us instead of 90% leaving as they do. But if we're going to live into the purpose of the principles, to be in covenanted relationship with each other, we need to take time to reflect on them, to consider how we understand them and how we live them out here in our congregation and in our lives. During the next few months, I plan on doing a series of sermons about the principles, unpacking each and hopefully showing how they're related to one another. And that's great for adults who want to learn more, but it isn't a celebration. So I want to encourage you to make Chalica special this week by lighting a chalice each evening. It doesn't have to be fancy or purpose-made. You know, margarita glasses make amazing chalices in a pinch. And while I've seen some really impressive corporate chalices used in our sanctuaries, my favorite one that I've ever seen was an empty, cleaned out tuna can glued to an overturned shot glass. So I'd say that you get extra points for creativity. And after you light your chalice, please spend a bit of time reflecting on the principles. You can find them online at uua.org, or you can open up either one of your hymnals and snap a picture with your phone right now because they're listed there. And if you live with another UU or two, talk together. And you can address the principles one by one, first principle on Monday, second principle on Tuesday. Or you can think about how they all work together and how many of the principles you actually lived out on that day. It's pretty simple stuff, really. And honestly, these are all things that I hope that we're already doing on a regular basis. Considering the practice of reflection on our values is possibly the most basic form of Unitarian Universalist spiritual practice we can engage in. But if you want to make this a holiday, a uniquely UU holiday, then you might want to consider engaging in these traditions. You can make a 7-pointed star, like the one the children made. And it doesn't have to be this huge. You could make it from sticks in your yard. You could make it from paint stirrers or Q-tips. It doesn't matter. It's also a great geometry lesson while you're at it. Put a mirror under your chalice as a symbol for the process of personal reflection. And it also serves the purpose of bouncing around the light that is so dim and rare this time of year. Nurture narcissus bulbs like these paper whites into bloom as reminders to reflect and to take loving care of yourself during this time of year when there's so much pressure put on us. Share sweet and savory bean dishes in solidarity with people around the world who rely on legumes as the mainstay of their diet. And also as a way of walking gently on the planet and using fewer resources. Play with recipes, share recipes, do crazy things like make brownies from black beans. Invite non-UU friends to dinner and into the conversation about living our values. You don't have to proselytize, just invite them in. You might consider exchanging small handmade gifts as tokens of your appreciation to friends and family. You could make things like baked goods or candies or soaps or spiked nuts, blank note cards or greeting cards, decorative items, framed photos. You might want to even consider bringing some of those gifts to the service next Sunday. Come up with your own rituals and traditions that bring joy to you and your family. I can't stress this one enough. The traditions you create today are the backbones of the memories that will make your children appreciative of their UU upbringing. And most importantly, tell the stories of how Chalica and its rituals originated for Unitarian Universalism, for this congregation, for you. Talk about what the rituals mean to you. The stories you tell today might just turn into the legends of your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And here's one more little thing. It's okay to listen to all of this and just feel, meh. You aren't required to go home and do anything just because I tell you to. We are UUs after all. And there's no pressure. There's no expectation to be joyful or creative or enthusiastic about something that just doesn't resonate for you. It's okay. But, and this is a big but, if you see someone else, another family, another individual, really enjoying this holiday, be glad for them. And know that at the core of our principles, no matter what they look like on paper, love is at the center, just like it's at the center of the covenant of this congregation. And the thing that holds our covenant together is the promise to dwell together in peace. And doesn't that mean letting people celebrate the way they want to? So let's dwell together in peace as we sing together. Please rise now or remain seated with joy as we sing number 346 in the Gray Hymnal,